Is artificial intelligence about to destroy Dead Rabbit Radio? And then we take a look at a mystery that I need your help investigating. What is the hidden secret behind a sinister mountain range? And then we take a look at a bizarre conspiracy theory involving one of America's most sinister serial killers. Is it true that world-famous cannibal Jeffrey Dahmer was actually a shape-shifting beast from beyond? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Shape-shifting beast from beyond. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. Your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great day too. Hope you guys had a great week. I know I haven't had any episodes come out last week because I was sick. I still don't know what it was. Flu, food poisoning, could have been really anything. I definitely am constantly on the verge of some novel virus. Patient Zero is my middle name. But someone who never gets sick, someone who could swim through raw sewage and come out clean, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, spilling raw sewage everywhere. Everyone get on your feet and give it up for Rico in Acapulco. Woohoo, yeah, wee, ha, yeah, woo. Washing himself off. Rico, people are like, we're going to stop donating money. That's a disgusting intro. What a terrible segue. Rico did a donation during our 6th anniversary live stream special. So make sure everyone who gets those donations in get shout-outs on the episodes. I also have some new Patreon supporters coming up to give shout-outs as well. Got a lot of new people joining the Fuffle every day. Rico, you're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially, I totally understand. I really do. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. Rico, I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the Jason Jalopy. Everyone climb on board this rickety old chitty bang bang car as Rico drives us out of Dead Rabbit Radio Command all the way to Cyberspace. We're driving through cyberspace, lawnmower man's flying around us. Like, that's such a weird reference. People are like, what does a lawnmower have to do with the internet? We're in cyberspace. This segment's going to be real short because I can almost guarantee I could talk about it for a half hour, and I really don't want to. It's equal parts curious and terrifying. And that's where we're talking about AI. Now, what's funny is, when I think about it, we've been covering AI-generated stuff long before it hit the zeitgeist. I remember doing an episode a couple hundred episodes ago, finding out that in Miami, I think they were using AI to write real estate listings. Because that stuff, it's just generic information that's compiled. And we covered it, and I said, this could be the beginning of the end. We have AI creating these real estate listings. What's next? Sports articles? News articles? And I said all that stuff hypothetical. It's happening now. Sports writers are starting to have, like, I think Sports Illustrated had a big scandal because they started using AI, making up names of journalists, publishing it without telling anybody. We've rapidly seen the advance of AI art, which, again, I looked at it as a curious thing and an atrocity. It might be too strong of a word, but you could type in a couple words and it'd come out with this piece of art. Here's the thing. I'm a terrible artist. I cannot draw. So when I saw AI produce art, and I've seen human-drawn art my entire life, both seem like magic to me. When I'm reading an old Spider-Man comic by Todd McFarlane, who to me is the best artist ever, right? That just show, like, I love his art. And I'd look at that level of detail as a teenager, and even today, and I was like, how do you draw this? How do you draw Spawn looking like this? I don't get it. This must be magic. So AI art was doing the same thing. I just go, but it's just like magic, but it's faster. Now, people who were artists looked at that, and they can say, these are all the things that's wrong with this art. This is why it's, on a technical level, not as good as a human. But to me, to the casual viewer, I'd go, it's a cool looking photo. It's a cool looking drawing. But I understood where we were headed. Because back when I was in college, when I worked at the college newspaper, we used to have debates over whether or not we should allow our photography team, our photojournalists, to use a brand new program called Photoshop. Huge debates about it. And they were national debates in colleges all over the country, in newsrooms all over the country. Should our photographers be allowed to use Photoshop? That is not photojournalism. You have to capture the moment. If something goes wrong in the shot, that's the shot. And now Photoshop is, I would assume, required at this point. I mean, I started to see that people eventually started to use it, and I'm sure it's a requirement. I'm not 100% on that, but knowing how to use Photoshop, we developed all of our photography in a darkroom at the journalism office. Also, a side note, a little Jason piece of trivia. I was the editor of the paper. I had to stay there all night long. I didn't have to stay there all night long. If I'd done my work during the day, I wouldn't have had to stay there all night long. But I didn't have a key to get back into the journalism. Can I get arrested for something I did 20 years ago? I didn't have a key to get back into the journalism office. I'd be on campus at American River College. I'd be there like 2, 3 in the morning. And basically, I was powered through mini-thins, which you guys may know as ephedra. You guys may know as the base ingredient for crank. But when I was in college, you could buy 6 pills at the gas station called mini-thins. I'd be up all night long working on the newspaper. And I'd have to urinate every once in a while. I'd have to pee. I'd have to drain the main vein. But if I left the journalism office, I couldn't get back in. I didn't have a key to open the doors. So what I would do was I would go into the dark room. I was always so worried I'd get caught. What a scandal. I'd have to go to the bathroom. It's 2 in the morning. I can't go to the bathroom down the walkway. So I'd go into the dark room, and first, so they have all these, like, Jason, wow, we just go back to the AI story. I want to hear about AI more than this. I'd walk into the office, and if you've never been in a dark room before, it's kind of what you think it is. It's a room with a light switch. And there's a bunch of, they mix their own chemicals to develop the film. So the place always stinks. But anyways, to get a little stinkier, I'd have to go to the bathroom. And they have this big sink that they'd mix the chemicals in and drain it down. And I'd be like, well, I gotta go pee. So I'll just pee in the sink. But the sink was too high for me. I'm a little guy. I'm a little baby man. So I had to, like, bring in a stool or a chair or something like that, and I would stand and I would urinate directly into the sink. But then I just got kind of lazy. I was doing this for weeks on end, months on end, really. I was getting lazy. It's like, oh, I gotta drag that chair all over. Yeah, whatever. I started thinking, you know what? There's all of these beakers and measuring cups, all of this plasticware on this shelf. And I need to pee, and I'm standing up to pee into the sink. I go, you know what would probably be easier? If I pulled down one of these cups that my colleagues used, not to drink out of, to actually mix chemicals in, I'd get this big plastic cup. It's like, like stuff you'd see in Breaking Bad. I'd take this cup, and I would just pee into this beaker, or whatever it was, like this flask, whatever the term would be. And some days I'm all filling up 2 or 3. I was like, oh, I had a little bit too much Mountain Dew today, buddy. I'd pee into the measuring cup or whatever, the chemical cup, and then I would pour it into the sink, and then I'd wash it out, and I'd put it back up on the shelf, and then I would leave. And I always was afraid. Because listen, man, it was a science, the way these guys mixed chemicals. It had to be just right. I was always afraid that one day I'd be sitting there, and a bunch of photographers going, ah! Screaming in the dark room. They come running out. Their eyes are all burning. Ah! Rolling around the floor. What happened? And they're like, oh, there must have been some sort of chemical reaction. Ah! This guy's skin's coming off. He's like, I'm supposed to get married tomorrow. He's all blistered. I always thought, there must be some sort of chemical reaction. When you mix human urine that's half speed, right? It's half ephedra, half Mountain Dew, Even though I washed the cups out, I'll be honest, it was a Jason wash, is what I call it, right? Where it's probably not as washed as it should be. But it's good enough. It's good enough. You don't smell anything, you don't see anything. We're copacetic. I always wondered, like when they'd go in there, and they'd start mixing chemicals. I'm all putting on hazmat gear. I'm all worried, and they're like, Jason, why are you wearing that hazmat gear? I was like, just in case. I'm all sweating Mountain Dew. Just in case. Just in case there's a chemical break. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah. So anyways, huge debate over whether or not they should be allowed to use Photoshop. That's where we're at with this AI art. And the problem is that I have a lot of friends that are artists. A lot of you guys are artists. And I'm already seeing them lose work. Because nowadays you can go and if you need a logo for your company, instead of hiring a graphic designer, which is what I recommend, you can just have something brought up on AI. And you're right. It's never as good as a human, especially when it comes to graphic design, because they know why certain graphics work. An actual artist will go, no, you don't want that graphic. It actually makes your business look too clinical. You have this type of business, this is the type of art you should use. They have experience with it. I looked at all that stuff and I knew what was coming down the pipe. All those episodes ago. I'll put it in the show notes. When they were using AI to write real estate stuff. But now, I was shocked by this. And here's the thing. I used to be a writer. I'd see the ChatGPT put out stuff and I'd go, that's pretty impressive. I also used to do music. I've worked in studios. I've sat a long time with musicians, watching them hone their craft. I used to live in an underground punk rock club / rehearsal space. So it'd be like 7 a.m. and 4 guys would walk in. Da-da-da! It's like, whatever. I mean, this is my life. I've lived very deeply in the world of music. There's this new, quote unquote, I'm sure it's been around longer than I found out about. There's a website called Suno.com, Suno.com. And last night I was goofing around with it and I typed in, make me a song about Dead Rabbit Radio, the daily paranormal podcast, and the host, Jason Carpenter. Make it like 90s gangster rap.
Creeping through the static, mind tries to unveil. Dead Rabbit Radio, mystery never fail. Carpenter run them like tails, colder than ice. Guys of the podcast, spinning tales of the night. Dead Rabbit when the shadows creep. Carpenter's got the stories deep. Paranormal flow can't deny. Every ear tune has secrets fly. Cryptid in the corner, got them all alarmed. Ghost stories so real, could do bodily harm. UFOs in the sky, beaming truth from afar. King of paranormal, talking about bizarre. Dead Rabbit where the shadows creep. Carpenter's got the stories deep. Paranormal flow can't deny. Every ear tune has secrets fly. From haunted halls to eerie calls. Cryptids crawling up the walls. Carpenter leading this crusade. Gangster tales and night parade. Bigfoot stalk, ghostly lights. Every episode, another fight. Unknown world behind the mic. Jason's tales cut through the hype. Dead Rabbit where the shadows creep. Carpenter's got the stories deep. Paranormal flow can't deny. Every ear tune has secrets fly. Cryptid in the corner, got them all alarmed. Ghost stories so real, could do bodily harm. UFOs in the sky, beaming truth from afar.
That song took 1.5 minutes to generate. It's called Carpenter on the Mic. I didn't name it. All I did was put in that prompt. It's not gangster rap, which is interesting. It's more of like a Limp Bizkit rock rap type of thing. And I put it in as a joke. I was sitting there with my friend Sabine, because I was hanging out with her. And I was showing her, I go, hey, I found this program this weekend. Check this out. Click. I was blown away. I was blown away by this song. Because I know how hard it would be to, again, if you're a professional musician, you go, I don't like that song. There's a lot of stuff wrong with it. I'm not a professional musician. I have done music and I've been in the music business. I've hung out with musicians. I see this as the skeleton of a song. I already see things that I would kind of change and tweak. But to the vast majority of people, and I would argue if you were listening to this song in the background, you're washing your dishes or doing your homework or driving the car like many of you do when you're listening to the podcast, you wouldn't be able to tell it was AI. Maybe you would detect something in the voice, maybe. There are other versions of different songs that the voice was far too mechanical. But this one, if a listener sent me this in and said, hey, me and my buddies, we got a band, we wrote you a theme song, and that was the song they sent, I would have been floored. Because while it's not perfect, if an amateur band sent me that, bravo. And that's what's terrifying about this. I did not know the technology was to this level. I have really felt like I've been keeping up to date on what AI is capable of. Because I just like technology stuff. Two, I think it's monumental in a lot of bad ways. As a toy, it's fantastic. As a replacement for human-generated stuff, I think it's going to be devastating. Because again, I've already seen people struggle to find work because customer base used to just go to them. Now they're doing AI. And the more we use AI art for commercial reasons, I don't think you should be a Luddite and say, I'm not even going to look at it, not even going to generate it for fun, I'm not going to do anything like that. I think that is not the way to go either. But if you're saying I'm just going to replace all of my human operations with this stuff, it's going to be a terrible blow. Not just economically, but creatively. This song, again, as raw as it is, and I posted another song. So that was the song I played here, was a rap rock. We're going to end the episode with a slow alternative rock song theme for Dead Rabbit Radio. And again, I'm not going to replace the theme songs or anything like that. The theme songs, the music that I have, are the music that I have. But the song we're going to play at the end of the episode, again, if a band sent that to me, and it was recorded with live instruments, and the voice was a live human, but the lyrics were the same, and the melody was the same, people would love it. People who knew music might think it was a little raw, but what do you expect from some dudes hanging out in their garage? Everything's not going to be perfect. It's terrifying. It's terrifying because I've known for a while that eventually the AI will come for the podcast realm. Podcasts are pretty low on the totem pole as far as a money-making venture, so they're not rushing towards it, but soon that will happen. You'll have podcasts that are AI generated. You'll have people who refuse to use AI even as a curiosity or as a toy. Then you're going to have people who try to replace everything with AI. I think the synthesis in between the two is where we're going to see most people go. They're going to use it as a framework. Someone may go, I got to have a jingle ready for this company in a month or a week or whatever. I'm going to use AI to do the heavy lifting. I'm going to get the catchy jingle. I'm going to get the lyrics, and then I will rework the lyrics and take it in. Re-record it with real music, take it in. I think a lot of people are going to start using that because I saw that happen with Photoshop. You had the people who refused to use it, who thought it was a toy for kids. You cannot use it in photojournalism. Then I saw the people who were making edits to pictures and it would become national news. There's that famous photo of like an Olympian who got injured and there's like a medic treating her, and the medic had an antenna on his backpack, and the antenna actually looks like it's poking through the athlete's head. And this was an AP photo, and that antenna got airbrushed out. Huge controversy. Huge controversy. This happened back in like the late 90s. There were articles and articles and articles written about that photo. How dare you remove the antenna? That is news. But again, nowadays, color correction, all of these things. Super interesting, and again, I don't want to talk about it too long. I know we're coming up to 20 minutes, but we got a lot more in store. It's also kind of depressing. Because I actually really like these songs. And if humans had sent them to me, I would love these songs. I would absolutely adore these. I would cherish them. I'd be like, wow, someone loves the show so much that they crafted these songs. And I would parade them around. I'd probably play them on rotation every once in a while on the show. But these songs don't exist. They don't exist. It's almost like when you have a dream and there's a melody in your dream, and when you wake up, you love that song. You heard this melody in your dream and you try to remember it, but it just slips away. By the time noon, 1, 3, later in the afternoon, you don't remember the melody anymore because it didn't exist in the first place. So it makes me sad. These songs actually kind of bum me out. I find them fascinating. I find the technology terrifying, and it's kind of depressing because a human didn't make them, a computer did. But I do like the songs. I do like the songs, but they're also reminders of where all of this is headed. Very, very interesting stuff. Yeah, it's a little depressing. Well, here's the thing. You're like, Jason, that song is kind of upbeat. Cryptids are chasing me around the house. Listen to the song at the end, and again, it's just very melancholy. You're like, yeah, this would be a cool song if humans crafted it. But that's where we're at. Rico in Acapulco, let's go ahead and toss you the hair hang glider. We're leaving behind cyberspace before Job, a.k.a. the Lawnmower Man, makes us his digital slaves. Fly us all. People are like, we never watched that movie. Quit referencing a movie from 92 that you saw in the theater. We're leaving behind cyberspace. Rico, fly us all the way up to Washington State. Rico, keep us in a holding pattern here. We're over a mountain range in the state of Washington. Actually, I misspoke. Keep going, keep going. He's like, oh, I thought we were going to relax. We're not going to Washington. We're headed even farther north. Take us up to British Columbia, Canada. We get up there. This is a story I kind of need your help with because I feel like I'm at an impasse. There may not be anything more to the story. No one can figure out. I have two big issues with this story. One is who, and the second one, why is this not a bigger deal? Maybe it's not supposed to be a bigger deal. I don't know. Let's take a look at it. The other day, this was a while back, I was actually on the X board. And someone posted looking for stories about supernatural British Columbia. Are there any stories up there? Weird things going on in British Columbia. And pretty quickly, you saw someone bring up the story about Anian Regnum. Anaya Regnum, aka the Kingdom of Anian. Kingdom of Anian, if you look at old maps, we're talking about, and this was really cool. I love the X community. They're constantly posting photos and stuff like that, cross-referencing things. It's this whole community working towards, what is this? This isn't what we're looking at, because this one's pretty well documented, but Kingdom of Anian, this is just kind of letting you know how this starts off. And you guys might find this fascinating. Do even more research on it. If you look at old maps, talking about a map from 1574, up where British Columbia appears on this map, it's labeled as Anian Regnum. And this was a well-known place in old-timey explorer days. People actually went looking for this kingdom. It was listed on the map. People believed that there was a kingdom up here that would be on the level of El Dorado and the City of Gold. A massive city-state. Now, there's nothing up there. I mean, there are, obviously there's indigenous people, trees, elk, squirrels, stuff like that, natural resources. There was no great city up there, but we do see it appear again on a map in 1593. Anian Regnum. And we're looking at this on the X board, and they're like, so what was that? There's been a book written about it. This is not a super popular conspiracy theory, but people do talk about this lost kingdom. What was it? What's interesting is I was looking at this map from 1593. All of this stuff is going to be in the show notes. And there was some writing in Latin. So, Google Translate, super weird, right? This is something that we take for granted now. But translator, going back to the AI thing, people used to get paid money to translate this stuff. Now I just go on Google Translate. They're having these live translation apps. People are going to lose their jobs because of that as well. I'm looking at this Google Translate. I typed this in the Latin and it said, "Here the societies of men are seen in the country. Living in tents like the Hordaru," which I think the closest translation to that is the horde. Here the societies of men are seen in the country, living in tents like the horde, which we see among the Tatars. It's very likely that there were Tatarians who crossed the Bering Strait and were here. It's also possible that what this is describing are, I keep wanting to use the term Native Americans, even though they're not from America, indigenous people living in tents, moving around, much like the Tartars. So it could have just been a recognition of a great indigenous state up there. Most likely not a huge, structured city, as we think of it. But this is what I find so fascinating, and you tell me, is there anything to this? Because the question I have is, you would think with... Let me get started here. I'm getting ahead of myself. Someone's posting, people are posting back and forth on this X board. And someone said, hey, does anyone have any idea of why in British Columbia there's two mountains next to each other? One is called Mount Moloch, and one is called Mount Baal, Baal. Like, who named those mountains that? Moloch? Baal? Evil entities? Destructive powers? Why would you name them that? Who named them that? Now, I started looking into it. A lot of people in the export started looking into this. Apparently, there's a mountain range nearby called the Devil's Range. There's a sub-range of a mountain range called the Valhallas. And then you have the Devil's Range. And you have Black Prince Mountain, Mount Mephistopheles, the Devil's Dome, Mount Diablo, Satan Peak, Devil's Spire, and Devil's Couch. You go, Jason, that's pretty normal, right? We do see places that may be identified by the indigenous population when Western settlers came over. They're like, yeah, we don't go up to those mountains. There's bad stuff up there. Sometimes we'll name them things like Devil's Peak. In Oregon, there's this campground that my friend went to. I was house sitting this weekend for him. They went to this campground. There was a place called Wendigo Trail. And it was spelt wrong. Wendigo was spelt wrong. And they were like, why is it called that? Have you heard anything? Are there any Wendigo sightings out there? So we looked it up. And really, we don't know why it's called Wendigo Trail. The general guess is, because a lot of people have tried wondering why it's called Wendigo Trail. The general guess is, well, I bet that when settlers came out there, the native population was like, that's not a good area to be at. There's very negative spirits out there. Oregon was founded by loggers coming from Minnesota, the northeast up there, which is where the Wendigo legend is really like a Canadian American Northeast story. They go, a lot of those loggers came and founded Oregon to do more logging out here. And they may have named it Wendigo Trail because Wendigo's not a name out here. It would have had to come from the east. They go, well, maybe they were told something was wrong with this trail, and so they named it after the beast that stalked them on the northeast. But you go, I've heard that too, right? You'll have a place called Devil's Pass, and you look into it, and it just has a bad reputation among the natives or the people who've been living there for a long time. That's not the case with this one. Take, for example, because some of these have Wikipedia entries. Oddly enough, Mount Moloch and Mount Baal does not. Not every one of them has a entry in here. But Devil's Couch, for example, when it was the settlers first came over, trade, trappers, loggers, whatever, who was the first people coming over here, they called it Toboggan Slide. Then in the 1920s, 1930s, it was changed to King Tut's Couch because of Egyptian mania was coming over all of United States. It wasn't until 1964 when it was named Devil's Couch, and that name was recognized by the Geographical Names Board of Canada. Lucifer's Peak did not get that name until 1977. Black Prince Mountain is also a new name. It hasn't been officially adopted by the Geographical Names Board of Canada, but again, it's a very recent name. So we have, just from those three ones that I was able to check, they're all recent name changes. This isn't something that's 100, 200 years old. The mountains are billions of years old, but... Now, here's my thing. This is what I find interesting about it. And it's not the fact that you have mountains called Devil's Spire. I should also say, too, that these mountains, most of them, drain into a river called the Slocan River. Slocan is a native term in that area meaning to pierce or strike the head open. Specifically, they're talking about fish, right? I left a little dramatic pause to make it sound like they are killing humans. Maybe they are, though, right? Maybe they are. Maybe they're fish humans. Just drain into the Slocan River. I'm not so curious as to why they're named that. I'm a little curious, because I get it, though, you have these spooky names. Generally, though, we can go back and go, well, this place is called the Devil's Circle because of this thing happened in old-timey Salem, whatever. What I find fascinating is that I did not know this existed until 2024. Where conspiracy theories are born and learn to walk, then run at the speed of a mouse click nowadays. How in the world does Real Raw News or Above Top Secret or any of these conspiracy websites, even the X-Board, not already have conspiracy theories about hidden secret societies operating, holding ceremonies, holding these rituals at Mount Moloch and Mount Baal? That's what I'm curious about. You can find these on a map. These aren't local nicknames. This is how they are listed. How in the world is this not a bigger conspiracy theory story? I'm not saying the conspiracy theory is true. I'm just flabbergasted that I stumbled across this. Everyone on the expert was like, huh, what? And typing stuff. Why are they named Mount Moloch and Mount Baal? Who named them that? And you start thinking about it and you go, why isn't there a conspiracy theory that once every 7 years, Hillary Clinton and Queen Elizabeth and a bunch of other famous people, I don't know, who's the other famous, Tom Hanks, they're all at Mount Moloch and they're all committing this human sacrifice. And they do it there because it's so high up, they don't have to worry anything about people stumbling across them. Or there's a hidden tunnel underneath Mount Moloch that has this base where all of these rituals are performed. And this mountain is right at the perfect geographical location, ley lines, whatever. That's my question. Because knowing this now, you could make up 50 conspiracy theories about it. Just right off the top of your head. I'm surprised this isn't big conspiracy theory news. Does that make sense? I'm not saying that there is a conspiracy theory up there. There's not many locations on the planet Earth that are named after Moloch or Baal. But here we have these two mountains right next to each other. And I've never heard this talked about in the world of conspiracy theory, ever. All the Pizzagate stuff. That was another thing I did want to keep going back to the AI, but I'm curious if I asked the AI to write a Pizzagate song, what would it pull up? But I'm out of credits, so I can't do that right now. But anyways, I know this is kind of a weird segment, right? I'm saying there's not a conspiracy theory, but why isn't there? So that's where I kind of want to use the collective mind power of the Fluffle. Like, is there something I'm missing here? Is there a legitimate reason why these mountains are named? And they're not directly connected to the Devil's Chain either. They're just spooky named mountains. Who named them? And the bigger question is, why don't we talk about them? You go, Jason, the reason why we don't talk about them is because there is no conspiracy theory happening up there. It's just two mountains. That would be the easy thing to go on, but a lot of this stuff is made up. A lot of these conspiracy theories are 100% made up. I see them all the time. I'm sure you do too. If you follow these websites, prediction after prediction, I probably read 3 or 4 into the world predictions a week. They're all made up. So how come no one's making stuff up about this? Because this is where my conspiracy theory mind goes. If you have something that nobody points to, even though it's obvious, that makes me think that that is real. That's when you have a conspiracy theory, everyone believes like flat earth. Not everyone believes, but you know what I mean? Flat earth is a big conspiracy theory. I go, that's a psyop. The combined mind power of everyone who loves flat earth theory is being misdirected over to this dumb conspiracy theory. Where if we took that same mind power, these hundreds of thousands of people who spend hours and hours a week online researching flat earth and arguing flat earth, if we use that brain power towards uncovering a legit conspiracy theory, that'd be fantastic. That'd be amazing. That's why you got to misdirect them. Because if you ask them to find out, like, hey, how does this business keep making all of this money even though its products are never selling? Or even, that's just hypothetical. Where did Jeffrey Epstein get all of his money? He didn't have a job. He was like a hedge fund investor for one guy. He was like a money man for one guy, and he had an island. He had this mansion. Where did he get his money from? The people who could be looking into that are looking over at Flat Earth. Hundreds of thousands. I think the conspiracy theory is stupid. I don't think the people who believe in it are stupid. I think they're misdirected. I think if you could use that mental power towards a legit conspiracy theory, and we're all misdirected in different ways, right? I think sometimes when you come across something that's obvious and no one's looking at it, it makes me think, wow, there might be something to that. But who knows? Maybe not. Maybe I'm sending you guys all on a wild goose chase. I don't know. I find it weird. I find it weird that nobody's talking about it, and that makes me think there might be something behind it. Rico, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world. Famous Carpenter copter. We're leaving behind Mount Moloch, an army of adrenochrome-fueled freaks. Cyber soldiers led by the lawnmower man himself are chasing us out of this facility. Rico, take us up, and away, and fly us all the way out to Wisconsin. This one I got from the conspiracy theory Iceberg, created by Sustained Disgust. Sustained Disgust put together an iceberg of over 1,000 subjects and links to where he got the information. It's fantastic work. This is the iceberg that we've been waiting for. We've talked about it a lot on this podcast. I've covered quite a few. Haven't even come close to scratching the surface. So thanks, Sustained Disgust. It's July 22nd, 1991. We're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we're about to meet a young man. I'm sure all of you guys know his name. If you have Netflix or you've ever read a newspaper or walked by the true crime section of a bookstore, we're about to meet a man named Jeffrey Dahmer. We're going to kind of speed run a lot of his stuff because really we want to get to the conspiracy theory. Is Jeffrey Dahmer actually a shapeshifter? So, again, I think everyone's pretty well aware of Jeffrey Dahmer. He was a man who ate people. He was trying to create a sex robot. Right? Ahead of his time. I guess I shouldn't laugh, right? Because it shouldn't make so much fun of Jeffrey Dahmer and his victims. But he was trying to create a sex slave. So he's trying to give these guys lobotomies, pour acid in their brain, and all sorts of horrible stuff, right? But anyways, we meet one of his victims, really his last victim, a young man named Tracy Edwards. He's 32 years old, and he's hanging out with Jeffrey Dahmer. Which you didn't know. You just thought it was a guy. You didn't know this dude was eating people. Like, you wouldn't be like, if you worked with a guy, be like, yeah, Jeffrey invited me over to his house. I really like his setup. He has, like, surround sound stuff, but he does eat people, so I don't know. Heard that he has that THX setup. I'll have to think about it. No, you didn't know he ate people, so you would go and hang out with Tracy Edwards, hanging out with Jeffrey Dahmer. And Jeffrey Dahmer says, yo, dude, you want to make a quick $100? Like, yeah, how do I do that? I want to take naked photos of you. I don't mean, listen, $100 is $100, really, if you think about it. He's like, here, put this apple in your mouth. We're going to pose you on this barbecue. No, so the dude's thinking about it. He's like, hey, $100, $100, pretty good idea. And then Jeffrey Dahmer goes, hey, look at that fish tank over there. You see that fish tank with all those fish? And Tracy turns and he's like, oh, yeah, it's pretty cool. You got fish in there? While he's looking at the fish tank, Jeffrey Dahmer jumps him, puts handcuffs on Tracy, and pulls out a big old Bowie knife. Big old military combat knife. Now, at this point, before we get to Tracy and Jeffrey, he had already killed 17 people. He killed someone back like in the 70s, like late 70s, early 80s, something around like that. Then he took a long time period off, and then he began killing people pretty regularly in the late 80s up into the 90s. He racked up a body count of about 17 people. Tracy's about to be number 18. Now he gets away. Tracy eventually overpowers Jeffrey Dahmer, hits him in the head with a hammer, takes off running down the street. Police are called. Jeffrey Dahmer gets arrested. Cops go in, they find all this body parts, stuff like that. Case closed. But was Jeffrey Dahmer a shapeshifter? This is something you won't find on court TV. There's been no Netflix documentary about this part. Was Jeffrey Dahmer a shapeshifter? And the reason why we have this story, outside of, sustained discuss, putting together this iceberg, he pulled this up. Chicago Tribune did an article published on February 1st, 1992. And it talks about Tracy Edwards, how he was the last man that Jeffrey Dahmer was ever going to kill. He was the guy who got away. So, I was going to pose nude, or I was mulling it over, actually. He didn't say whether or not he was going to do it. Jeffrey Dahmer told me to look at this fish tank, and the next thing I knew, Jeffrey Dahmer had slapped handcuffs on me and pulled out this large military-style knife. And that's when Tracy Edwards, when he's telling this to the Chicago Tribune, he said Dahmer's, quote, face seemed different. His body structure. He was like a totally different guy, unquote. So in that moment, when he shifted from Jeffrey Dahmer to this raging lunatic, this cannibal, he was a different person. And Tracy saw that in his face. And not just his face, his body. He shifted into something else. You go, Jason, well, yeah, that's not what I expected when you called him a shape-shifting beast. Talk about clickbait, Jason. You called him a shape-shifting beast from beyond. I listened to this for 40 some odd minutes, and he just shrugs his shoulders. He doesn't even growl. He just looks different. Well, here, okay, I'll admit, that was a clickbait title, but he had a different look on his face. Haven't you ever, seen someone get angry? You're like, oh, it's a beast from beyond, running away. No, it was more than that. He didn't grow wings, he didn't grow fur, nothing like that. But that would have been awesome. But nope. He was different. He was visibly different. Now, what's interesting about this is there is something behind this. I love true crime. I grew up reading true crime. Tons of articles, tons of books about this stuff. And something that you come across every so often are stories of people who... This is usually I can't think of a specific one because I've read this a couple times. A girl goes out on a date with a guy who eventually becomes a serial killer, or maybe is an active serial killer at that point. I've seen different versions because this does happen. This has happened multiple times throughout the decades. And what will happen is, this is generic version, girl's out on a date with a guy, everything's going fine, he's funny, he's charming, witty, all of this stuff. And then something comes up and the mask slips for a second. And the woman will say, I'm sitting across the table from this guy, I just met him. I gave him my phone number. The next day we're out on a date. We're having dinner and something happens and I see him change. For a moment, his face is different. He has a different face. It is not the guy I've been sitting across the table for the past hour and a half with. And in that moment, these stories, again, we talk about this in the world of paranormal, we get the survivor stories. The woman goes, I ended the date. Or we finished eating our dessert, but when I left, I never returned any of his phone calls because I picked up on something. There was something deeply wrong there, and it wasn't just a feeling. This story has been repeated. I've read this story with multiple different serial killers over the years. Their face changed. They were a different person, not metaphorically. They actually had a different face for this moment. Like the waiter pissed them off, or the conversation turned to a subject they didn't like, or it was just something. And for a moment, they see that face. It's a shapeshifts. And they're aware of it, and they say, I'm not going to hang out with that guy anymore. Now, you imagine there are times where women did meet him, and maybe the mask never slipped. They didn't know they were with a serial killer until, they were getting stabbed multiple times in the neck. There's also probably times where the face slipped, but the woman didn't pick up on it. Either because she wasn't looking directly at him, she was distracted, and he's getting mad at the waiter, or that she sees it, but it doesn't connect in her head. She doesn't put two and two together. Like, wow, that was not him for a second. Like, imagine if you thought it was weird, but you didn't really know what you were seeing. We hear the survivor stories. And that does come across and stuff. Now, what's interesting is if that was it, if it was just, some anecdotal stories of women who went out with serial killers and this story, I probably still would mark it up to the man getting angry. And sometimes our face can change when we're angry. And it doesn't so much look like we're a different person, but you can tell we're experiencing a different emotion. If it was just the story of these people who had close calls with serial killers, I probably wouldn't find it as intriguing if I didn't also know this next story. Because I think this next story really does show that there is something else going on. This isn't just them getting mad. This isn't a figurative, he had a different face. There was something different about him. There was a whole new essence. Truly a shapeshifter. Losing its form. The real is the beast. The false is the man wearing the mask to disguise the beast. Let's take a look. This is a story that I've heard multiple times over the years. I find it absolutely fascinating. And when I started reading this by Sustained Disgust, again, thanks for posting this Iceberg, I immediately went to this story. And I'm going to read you this verbatim because I think it's just the best way to do it. It's quite short, and then we'll wrap it up. What are we at right now? Okay, we're almost an hour. I'm trying to make the show shorter again. I apologize. This is a short story description of an event from Amy Green. Amy Green was the wife of Marilyn Monroe's personal photographer, Milton Green. And I've read this multiple times. I got this from online, but this is a story I'm pretty familiar with. I've read over the years. Find it fascinating. Amy Green tells this story. She goes, quote, I'll never forget the day Marilyn and I were walking around New York City, just having a stroll on a nice day. She loved New York because no one bothered her there like they did in Hollywood. She could put on her plain Jane clothes and no one would notice her. She loved that. So as we're walking down Broadway, she turns to me and says, do you want to see me become her? I didn't know what she meant, but I just said yes. And then I saw it. I don't know how to explain what she did because it was so very subtle, but she turned something on within herself that was almost like magic. And suddenly, cars were slowing, and people were turning their heads and stopping to stare. They were recognizing that this was Marilyn Monroe, as if she pulled off a mask or something. even though a second ago nobody noticed her. I had never seen anything like it before. Unquote. Dude, isn't that crazy? I read that years ago, and I was like, that's nuts. Like, what is that? What is that mechanism? Something she could turn on and off. She could go from Norma Jean to Marilyn Monroe in an instant. So I believe there's something there. It's not just about serial killers and seeing the demon within type of thing. I mean, that would be the go-to thing, right? These people are so evil, evil infests them, and you're seeing the evil. And while that could play a part of that, this is an amazing parallel of that, because it's not evil. I know some people may think she sold her soul to the devil for fame and fortune. I understand that is a conspiracy theory for celebrities, but barring that, is there a mechanism in some people that allow them to make these shifts? And it could be, outside of the blind date story, so maybe including those too, but let's go back to the Jeffrey Dahmer story. It could not be that the mask slipped on Jeffrey Dahmer, that he was now so enraged the beast came out. Imagine you're in a life and death situation against somebody, and for a moment you go, oh my God, that's not another human, that's a beast. That's an animal. There's a shock value to that. That would take the fight out of you. If you realize, oh, I'm not fighting a flesh and blood man, I'm fighting a monster. Like, there's something new and evil in front of me that wasn't there just a minute ago. It could be a shock factor. It could be something that these killers are turning on and off to get pleasure, to scare people. I don't know, but I wonder if there is actually something there. And it's funny because we could go to, no, it's the mask slipping and this demon is showing its true form, but that may not be part of it. This may be a power that some people wield, and some people do it for good, right? To make millions of dollars as an actress. And some people do it for evil, to intimidate their enemies, or even Marilyn Monroe included, infested with some sort of other entity, demon, what have you, that's always vying for control, that gives them this ability to shapeshift. And who knows? I guess this episode is the who knows episode. But I do believe, I don't know what the mechanism is, but I do believe something's there. And I do think it's more complicated than just serial killers possessed by evil and that evil coming out for a second. I think it's more than that. There might be a very, very small minority of humans who have this power. And I argue most of them probably don't even know they have it, because they don't. If you're working at Kinko's, it's not like you're standing there and someone's yelling at you and they're like, you know what? All of these copies suck. Look at, they're all just copies of your butt. I want to speak to the manager, and all of a sudden the lights dim a little bit and your face changes and you go, I am the manager. You turn your name tag around. And you're like, sorry about the lights dimming. That wasn't part of my plan. That is us not paying our electric bill. Most of the time, if you had this ability, would you ever even know you had it? Would you ever be in a situation where you'd have to turn your humanity off for a second? But again, with the Marilyn Monroe story, it seems more illuminating. Like light is coming down to her from heaven and showing a new side. It's absolutely bizarre. I think it's very simplistic to think that these serial killers, they're just seeing the demonic coming through. But at the same time, that's what I would have thought had I not known about this Marilyn Monroe story. When I was reading the Jeffrey Dahmer thing, I go, this reminds me a lot of that Marilyn Monroe story. Is there a subset of humans that actually have the ability to shift in that way, where you can be looking at someone and then it's a different person in front of you? It's Norma Jean to Marilyn Monroe. And Amy Green knows Marilyn Monroe. They hang out. But even she saw that shift, and she watched the world slow down, as if Marilyn Monroe just appeared out of nowhere. Is there a subset of humans that actually have the ability to shapeshift in these ways? And how many would be my question. And among that many, how many even know that they have this ability? Do you? You're all standing in front of the mirror for the next hour. You're all doing faces. You're like, come on, shapeshift. I want to be Marilyn Monroe or Beast from Beyond. That's the best. I love. I don't know if I chuckled when I said that on the recording, but in my head I go, I might be kind of overselling it. Let's go ahead and play this last AI song again. It's kind of depressing. I can understand if you hate AI, just end the episode here, but I find it absolutely fascinating and terrifying and a little depressing. But let's wrap it up with this AI song. We'll be back to our regular music tomorrow. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal conspiracy and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great one, guys.
Dark night, the radio plays. Questions in the airwaves. Whispers from the shadows. Secrets buried deep. Jason's voice, it calls to me. Stories of the unseen, ghostly ghouls and mysteries. Tune into the unknown. Dead Rabbit Radio, where the night breathes slow. Stories that chill the bone. Enter the twilight zone. Lost highways and hidden trails. Tales of haunted jail cells. Truth is stranger than we know. Feel the fear start to grow. Midnight hits, the static hums. Shivers down the spine, they come. Jason takes us down the line. Into the depths of our